The more you speak, the more you reveal. The less you say, the more powerful you become. Every word you give away is a piece of yourself handed to others. But silence makes people uneasy. It forces them to wonder, to doubt, to respect. What if silence isn't weakness at all, but the sharpest weapon of power? Robert Greene's Law 4 is simple but ruthless. Always say less than necessary. Every time you speak too much, you give others a window into your mind. Your words reveal your intentions, your fears, your limits. But silence creates mystery. It forces others to fill the gaps with their own imagination, and often they imagine more power than you actually hold. By the end of this video, you'll see why silence is one of the sharpest psychological weapons. We'll look at history, at modern life, and how to use silence without ever appearing weak. And if you want more timeless lessons on psychology, stoicism, and power, subscribe to this channel so you never miss what others are too distracted to learn. Law 4. Always say less than necessary. Law 4 of power is one of the simplest, and yet one of the hardest to master. Always say less than necessary. Why? Because the moment you speak too much, you lose control. Every extra word reveals something about you, your emotions, your desires, your weaknesses. And once revealed, those words can never be taken back. Think about it. When someone talks endlessly, what happens? They become predictable. They expose their plans. They show their ego. They give you the map to their mind. And once someone has your map, you are no longer powerful. You are vulnerable. But silence works differently. Silence creates ambiguity. It unsettles people. It makes them wonder what you're hiding, what you're planning, what you're thinking. And here is the psychology. People cannot stand gaps in information. Their minds rush to fill the silence with their own fears, doubts, and assumptions. And when they do, your silence becomes more powerful than 1,000 words. This is the dark psychology of silence. Ambiguity creates intimidation. If they don't know your next move, they can't defend against it. Silence creates respect. The one who speaks least always appears in control. The one who speaks too much always seems desperate to be heard. Silence turns projection into power. People imagine things about you. Some will think you are stronger than you are. Others will believe you are planning something greater than reality. Either way, their imagination does the work for you. History proves it. The greatest leaders were often the quietest in public. Marcus Aurelius wrote for himself, not for applause. Napoleon concealed his intentions until the last moment. Even modern CEOs like Steve Jobs use silence as a weapon, revealing little, creating mystery, and then striking with maximum impact. And here's the truth most people miss. Talking too much doesn't just expose you to enemies. It weakens you even with friends. The more you reveal, the less rare you become. Mystery creates value. Overexposure destroys it. So the law is simple. Speak less than necessary. Not complete silence, not isolation, just enough words to get what you want. No more, no less. Remember this. Words are currency. Spend too many, and you go broke. Spend them wisely, and you become rich in power. Silence isn't emptiness. It is pressure. It is weight. It is power without lifting a finger. Let me give you 3 examples where silence decided power. 3 moments in history where the person who spoke less ended up controlling everything. The first one, Louis XIV, the Sun King of France. Louis ruled longer than almost any king in Europe. And his strength wasn't just in armies or wealth. It was in silence. Picture this. The Palace of Versailles, filled with nobles. Every man in that court wanted something. Influence, wealth, favors. They flattered. They schemed, they whispered in corners, and in the middle of it all, Louis said almost nothing. He would often sit in silence as others argued or begged for his attention. No outburst, no explanations, not even reassurance, just calm, unreadable silence. And this drove his courtiers mad. They began to analyze every pause, every look, every tiny gesture. Was he angry? Was he pleased? Did he approve? Here's the power of it. When you say less, people start doing the work for you. They project their fears and their hopes into the silence. They reveal themselves, while you reveal nothing. Louis learned everything about his nobles, their weaknesses, their ambitions, simply by saying less. And the effect? He became untouchable. His silence wasn't emptiness, it was pressure. It forced everyone else to tread carefully, to compete for his favor, to obey without even knowing what he was truly thinking. The lesson is sharp. Silence creates mystery, and mystery creates power. Louis XIV understood that the moment you speak too much, you shrink. But when you hold back, others imagine greatness in you. And that imagination is far more powerful than anything you could say. The second example is Charles Maurice de Talleyrand, one of the most cunning diplomats France ever produced. If Louis XIV used silence to control his court, Talleyrand used it to control entire nations. Talleyrand was present at some of the most critical negotiations in European history, from the French Revolution to the rise and fall of Napoleon, and even the Congress of Vienna. He was surrounded by kings, generals, and ministers who lived on rhetoric, long speeches, passionate arguments, endless words, and yet he was famous for speaking almost nothing. In meetings, he would let others talk themselves into exhaustion. He would sit, listening, calm and still, letting the silence hang heavy. And here is the psychology. People cannot endure silence. The moment there is a pause, most feel an irresistible urge to fill it. They reveal secrets, they overshare intentions, they make promises they shouldn't. Talleyrand understood this better than anyone. While others rushed to fill the quiet, he gathered information. He studied them. Every slip of the tongue gave him more power. By saying less, he made others give away more. One of his most famous maxims was this: speech was given to man to disguise his thoughts. He knew words were camouflage, but silence? Silence was the real weapon. Because in silence, you don't just protect yourself. You also make others unmask themselves. And that is why diplomats feared him. His silence made them nervous, unsettled. They began to imagine plots and traps that weren't there. They began negotiating with ghosts in their own minds, while Talleyrand simply sat, patient, controlled, and always 2 steps ahead. The lesson: silence disarms, words expose, and the man who masters silence in negotiation controls not just the room, but the outcome. The third example takes us from kings and diplomats to the modern boardroom, Elon Musk. Now, Musk is known for bold ideas and impossible goals, but here's something most people miss. He uses silence as a weapon just as effectively as Louis XIV or Talleyrand ever did. Watch him in interviews. Often, when asked a difficult question, he doesn't rush to answer. He pauses. Long, uncomfortable silences. The interviewer fidgets, the audience waits, the tension builds, and then, only after he has made everyone feel the weight of that silence, he speaks. Short, measured, sometimes just a few words. But those few words carry more impact than 1,000 thrown out in haste. The same thing happens in business negotiations. People who have worked with Musk say he often listens without giving much away. Investors, employees, even competitors end up talking more, revealing more, trying to fill the silence. By saying little, Musk learns everything. He keeps others off balance. And when he finally does speak, it sounds decisive, final, because silence gave it weight. Think also of Tesla and SpaceX product launches. Notice how little is revealed before the big moment. No endless details, no constant chatter, just mystery. Anticipation builds. Rivals guess, speculate, prepare for things that don't even exist. And then Musk reveals the product on his terms. Apple mastered this before him. Musk perfected it in tech. The lesson here is the same thread running through history. Silence protects, Silence creates weight. Silence forces others to reveal themselves. And silence, when finally broken, gives your words the force of a hammer. Musk shows us that even in a noisy world where everyone is tweeting, posting, and shouting for attention, silence still dominates, not because it hides weakness, but because it creates power. Now let's bring this law down from the courts of kings and the boardrooms of billionaires to your own life, because silence is not just for rulers and diplomats, it's for anyone who wants to hold their ground with strength. In conversations, learn to listen more and talk less. When you stay silent, people lean in. They start second-guessing themselves. They reveal more than they intended. And then, when you finally do speak, your words carry a weight they never would have if you had spoken too soon. Silence makes your voice heavier. At work, resist the urge to reveal every thought, every plan, every detail. Mystery is a shield. When colleagues or rivals can't quite read you, they stay cautious. They don't know where you're heading, so they can't block the path. Remember this: it's not your responsibility to announce your moves. It's your responsibility to make them. In relationships, silence can be just as powerful, not coldness, but pauses. When you stop rushing to fill the gaps, the other person starts to reflect, to reveal, to rethink. Silence creates space for truth to emerge, and more often than not, they'll tell you more than you ever expected. And here's the practical key: speak with brevity. Don't waste words. Let silence become the punctuation that makes everything you say land with authority. Imagine silence as a pause in music. It's the gap that makes the note beautiful. This is how you use Law 4 in daily life. Speak less, listen more, protect your thoughts until they are ready. Let silence do the heavy lifting, because silence used well is not emptiness, it is pressure, it is power. Here's the hidden truth most people never realize. People don't fear your words, they fear your silence. Why? Because silence forces them to face themselves. When you don't answer right away, when you don't reveal your thoughts, they start to hear the noise of their own insecurities. They question themselves. Did I say too much? Did I offend him? What is he thinking? That's the pressure of silence. It isn't absence, it's presence, magnified. The less you say, the more they reveal. The less you explain, the more they assume. And often their assumptions will be far greater, far darker, far more powerful than anything you could have actually said. This is why silence is feared. It shifts the burden of anxiety onto the other person. They become desperate to break it, to fill it, to explain themselves. And while they scramble, you remain still, in control. Remember this: in the psychology of power, words are often wasted. But silence is never wasted. Silence unsettles. Silence intimidates. Silence rules. Imagine walking into a room and commanding attention without saying a word. Imagine every pause you hold making people lean in, nervous, uncertain, wondering what's behind your silence. Imagine being feared and respected, not for the noise you make, but for what you withhold. That is the dark psychology of silence. Power not built on speeches, but on stillness. Influence not in what is spoken, but in what is left unsaid. And once you learn to carry this silence with you, you'll never need to shout again. Words can betray you, silence never will. The more you speak, the more you give away. The more you hold back, the stronger you become. Master silence, and you master power.